Live on Instagram. Let me know you can see and hear me okay. We're live on the other platforms as well. So good evening and welcome to this Ask Me Anything About Property Investing episode number 57. So we've been running for a little while now, and really what we do here every Monday evening is answer your questions about investing in property. Whatever questions you've got for me with regards to investing in property, make sure you put it in the comment section, whichever platform you're watching on, whether that's Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, whatever it is, pop in the comment section below and we'll do our very best to answer that for you this evening. We started a little bit late, apologies, slight tech glitches. Hey, but that's how it is, so apologies for that. We'll get cracking with our first question in a moment, so we won't have any further delays in terms of getting started. As I said, depending on whatever platform you're watching it on, pop a comment in, and in fact say hi as well. Let me know you can see and hear me okay, because we have had a few tech challenges this evening before we started. So let's get our first question up on the screen, which is from Kevin on YouTube. Hi Saj, how many rooms can you rent out while you reside in the property? How does does this also need HMO certs? Does Article 4 come into play with this? I think, Kevin, these are really good questions. One, you need to check with your local council, because this can vary from council to council. Some of them will see as a regular HMO, even if you're living there. So it needs to comply with all the various things. Others will just see as your home. So I think it is really important that this is something you check with your council, because it's not a kind of a regular thing that will apply in any circumstances. So one, to check with them. I suspect you'd need to do the regular things in terms of fire safety that you would need to have in a regular HMO anyway. The main difference is the people living in the property are your lodgers. They're not regular tenants as such. They're living in your home as well. So yeah, see how you get on with that, and then in fact pop us a message as well. Let us know what area you're in and what they give you as feedback there as well. So our next question is from Omar on Facebook, live on Facebook, loud and clear. Okay, it's not a question. Thank you very much for that. Good, so you can see and hear me okay. Keep firing those questions. So let's get going with the questions you've got for me around investing in property. Remember, Wednesday, we've got a big day happening. We've got the budget. There'll be some changes probably happening that will affect the property market as well. So we want to keep an eye on those. So our next question is from Asif on YouTube. Hi Saj, when flipping, what is the optimum time to sell the property? Or if we can purchase a refurb within 3 months, is it best to take the property to market straight away or wait 6 months? So people talk about 6 months in terms of flipping a property. Sometimes what they might be doing is referring to the 6-month rule when it comes to mortgages. What that means is the person, there's another part to the question. As I understand, the banks may not lend on the property if the owner hasn't held the property for 6 months. Yes, that's exactly what I was just jumping onto. So main times people think about the buyer of the property when they're buying the property and they're applying for their mortgage. And the mortgage lender looks at the property and says, well, the seller hasn't owned it for 6 months. That can sometimes cause a problem in terms of putting a new mortgage on it for them to purchase it. So it's no issue with you in terms of renovating, getting it finished, getting it on the market, getting it sold, but the person buying it might have some difficulty around mortgaging. So hence why the 6-month rule. But if you can demonstrate as a seller as a property, because I've had this, if you can demonstrate you're a professional property trader, investor, developer, that's what you do, then the banks are normally okay with that. In my experience, they have been okay. When I'm selling a property and we're selling it within 6 months, we can demonstrate that we've added significant value. This is the nature of our business and this is what we do. They were okay with that. They just want to make sure there's nothing underhand going on. There's not being flipped on somebody else. There's no sub transaction going on in the background. The banks, there's no kind of fraud being committed or anything like that's going on as well. That's what they want to be concerned about. But I would turn it around. I'd get it on the market as quick as I can, because bear in mind, you know, you got your renovation done, you get it up for sale. You might not get an offer immediately. That offer then might take time for the survey to get done, to the point to get the mortgage offer, to get to the conveyancing. At that point, you might already at 6 months anyway. So I wouldn't necessarily wait just so that you think the buyer is going to have your ownership is going to be more than 6 months, making it easy for the buyer. I just get on with it and just get it done. Our next question. I think got a slight connection issue here on Instagram. Inokezi on YouTube. Hi Saj, if you install TV in tenants' individual rooms, HMOs, whose responsibility is it to pay for the TV license? Does a TV in the rooms impose desirability for HMO rooms? So here's the thing. We put TVs in some of our rooms. Some of our newer HMOs, we put a TV in the room. It's actually the tenant's responsibility to get a TV license for that TV. Now, the TV that we provide in the communal space of the property, i.e. in the lounge, a living room, or in the kitchen, if we put a TV in there, we'll cover that with our TV license. So as a landlord, we'll get a TV license for that. That covers that, along with the other bills as well that we're paying on that property. But the one in the bedroom is the tenant's responsibility. And we make sure we put that clearly on the tenancy document so they're aware that they're responsible for that. Generally speaking, if there's a lock on the door and they've got a TV behind that room, then it is their responsibility. If there's no lock on the door at all, so for example, let's say it's a student HMO and you haven't necessarily got locks on the doors because you've let all 4 rooms out to, say, a group of 4 students that are living together in one shared house, it's still a HMO because there's 4 people in there, they're unrelated to each other, but it doesn't necessarily, you're not having them on individual tenancy agreements. And in that case, if they've got TVs in their rooms, they don't need a separate TV license because there's no locks on that door. So if you've got separate tenancies you've issued, you've got locks on the doors, and pretty much you need a TV license for that room, and we pass that responsibility on to the tenants. So I hope that helps. Our next question that we've got is on YouTube from Adam. Hi Saj, I'm from London and I want to start my property journey with deal sourcing, packaging strategy and combine it with rent to rent strategy. What's the best way to go about that as a roadmap for me? So Adam, I don't have enough background, but let's say you were looking at doing sourcing. Sourcing and rent to rent are essentially 2 different types of strategies unless you're sourcing rent to rent specifically type of property. What you're doing with sourcing is you're looking for deals, opportunities. So what is a deal and what is an opportunity? Well, really, it's something that you can make some money from in terms of property. When it comes to property investing, it might be that the property is discounted below the market value, i.e. below market value. It might be there's some opportunity to easily add value to it under some, say, permitted development rights. It might be it's in an area where it's very easy to convert to a HMO and it might be desirable HMO, etc., etc. Someone has the ability to be able to easily make money or relatively easily make money from that particular property. So it's an opportunity for somebody. And as a sourcer, what you're doing is you're finding these opportunities to provide them to somebody else and somebody to pay you a fee. So essentially you're charging for your service and them to take that property and be able to benefit from it. And if that's what you're doing and you're in London, you got to think about what type of property you're going to find people. What is it that you're going to be able to go and find and offer things to people? Because remember, in this marketplace, what you're doing is essentially acting as a middle person. So you need to have a product that you can find and a buyer that's prepared to pay you for your service. So you need to work out these 2 things first of all, rather than saying, hey, I'm just going to go out and find BMV property. You've got to make sure you've got some clarity around who's going to buy those deals from you. And also, are you going to be able to find those type of deals? Because remember, the market is constantly evolving. The property is cyclical. There's different points of that cycle. The property market may be at any one moment in time. So for instance, at the moment, the market is quite strong, prices are quite high. So finding properties at, say, 25% below market value is exceptionally difficult. So if you go looking for that, say in London, you might find that quite difficult to do. So think about what type of properties that you're going to find, who's you going to offer them to. Now that's going to give you some cash flow, some income as those deals go through. You'll earn some money, and then some of that money you could put into then rent to rent type deals where you can get them up and running and start generating income for you on that basis. Personally, I would probably do one as opposed to both of those at the beginning, because otherwise you're spreading yourself a bit thin. Both of those strategies are fairly time intensive, but they don't require a huge amount of money to get started, but they do require a lot of time and effort. And if you're trying to do both of them at the same time, you're spreading yourself super thin. So that would be my suggestion on that. Hope that helps you with that. Our next question that we've got is also on YouTube from Ali. Hi Saj, when will you see you back up and networking? So Ali, I hope it's soon. I've absolutely no idea. So on the government's current roadmap, I think it's June, most events start kind of getting back to normal. So I'm thinking right now, it's very probable that we'll run our first event in probably September. So after the summer holidays, we don't normally run any events in August anyway. So after summer, hopefully by then things are kind of a little bit more settled. Hopefully we're getting back to some normality and we'll start running our events again, particularly the networking event, September. That's what we've earmarked right now. So I'd say there's still a few months to go. Things could change, but right now I'm aiming to restart and launch our events again from September. So I hope that helps. Our next questions off Instagram, which Khalid's posted up on the screen. Sajate. Hi Saj, with Article 4 in Birmingham, how difficult is it to convert a property into HMO? Has it killed off a HMO market? So it's an interesting question. Is the HMO market now dead? The HMO market isn't dead. The HMO market is strong. It's buoyant. However, creating more HMOs now in Birmingham is much more challenging because it means you can't just take a regular house and turn it into a HMO. You now need to go through planning permission, hence Article 4 in the city. What that also means is it affects the supply and demand in terms of how many HMOs are in the area, what kind of demand there is for them. People are still actively wanting to do HMOs. It's a profitable strategy. And what that means is people are still looking to buy houses and either convert them or buying existing properties as HMOs. So because the supply and demand alters, there's still a healthy demand, but the supply is now starting to drop. You can't create more and more. What will happen is the value of these properties will start to go up. They'll start to increase. They'll start to go up in value, which is what happened previously in parts of Birmingham, especially around the university, when that became Article 4 a few years ago. Because you couldn't create more HMOs in that area, the price of those HMOs started to skyrocket. Now, I'm not saying Birmingham existing HMOs are going to skyrocket in price immediately, but over time, I'm sure they are going to have an impact in terms of prices rising because there'll be a much more limited supply in terms of what's available in the marketplace. Now, of course, the alternative is that you go through the planning process and you find properties that are going to work. The most popular areas, where there's most HMOs, where there's the biggest demand for HMO rooms, if you like, in these traditional areas, what you'll find is that actually there isn't you're probably going to struggle more so to be able to create them there, because the whole purpose of Article 4 means the council are trying to control the number of these properties that are appearing and where they're starting to appear. So what you'll be looking for really is locations where there aren't that many other HMOs. And the key thing here is you need to do some research and understand the market, the demand, because if there aren't already that many HMOs in the area, is there actually a demand for rooms in that area as well? Because you might hear me saying this before a few times, that the HMO market in Birmingham is not like London, that you could probably rent a room anywhere. It tends to work in little pockets. There's certain pockets that work really well, and there's already lots of HMOs in those areas. They're the ones you're probably going to struggle to get a new HMO set up in via the planning permission route. And if you go off venturing into new areas where there isn't that many HMOs already, you just need to be sure there's some demand there. And if we can help with that, just reach out to us. We've got a lot of HMOs in Birmingham, a lot of experience, so we can help you, maybe give some pointers with that as well. So our next question is from Nick on LinkedIn. A couple of my properties have been left empty for some months. After reading online and doing research, it might be worth mentioning to people that out there that if properties have been empty for some time, it's worth running the hot water, taps and showers fully hot for at least 5 minutes. The hot water temperature needs to be at least 60 degrees. So, Nick, this is a good point. If your properties are empty, you can have all kinds of problems with pipes being burst, your insurance not being valid, or you on minimum insurance cover. So if you've got properties empty for any particular reason, you need to make sure you're keeping a close eye on them, visiting them regularly, make sure the water is circulating, as Nick said there as well, with the hot water, make sure the boiler, you're circulating, running through all the pipes, you haven't got any leaks, you haven't got any problems there as well. And also make sure your insurance is covering you correctly for the period that they are empty. So good point for that. Thank you for that, Nick. Next question is on YouTube. Choice between Sky Sports on your channel. No competitions, how do you say every time? Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Look, I'm here every Monday evening, really to give up more time for you, to help you with your property investing journey. So this is a time to get your questions answered. I get bombarded on social media through messaging about questions. And really the team tend to just message back and say, hey, look, best way to get questions answered is on a Monday evening. So this is your opportunity. Thank you so much for that. So our next question is on YouTube from Jonathan. I have 30,000 to invest. Would you say increasing my pot via flipping houses before going into BRRR and focus on cash flow? If so, how much would you say is a good number to get to 50K, 100K? Jonathan, I think the key thing here is it depends on where you're going to do this. So, for example, if you're down south, the property is going to be much more expensive. To flip properties at 50,000 really isn't going to get you very far at all. I think actually you mentioned even less than that. Was it 40,000? Was it 40? Okay, I think it was 40,000 you said. It's not a lot for down south anyway. And then if you're going further north you go, the property will get cheap. 30,000, sorry, you have 30,000 to invest. The further north you go, that 30,000 will get a little bit further. However, again, it's not a huge amount of money. So you got to think about how else can you leverage that. Personally speaking, what I would do if I was going to be flipping properties, I'd be thinking about who else would work with me, who would fund those deals so we can do some kind of profit share so that you can get the momentum going in deals. So now when we're doing property deals, for example, we pretty much buy most things for cash. And the way we do that is I don't have endless amounts of cash, is I work with other investors, other people that have got funds to come in the deal with me, to fund the deal, and we do some kind of profit share or a fixed return on their money that they're investing with me. In the same way, you can look for people who might be open to working with you, funding deals, putting money with you to do this type of thing. And as you build your experience up, or maybe even work with experienced people yourself if you haven't got much experience, to de-risk the deal, because ultimately what you want to do is make sure you exit out of these deals with a profit. Now, if you're new, you're inexperienced, and the chances of making mistakes are much higher, and then the chance of getting wiped out and not ending up with a profit is much higher as well. So you have to be very careful when you're doing these type of deals. But my preference would be flipping, as long as there's a market there to be able to sell to. That's what I'd prefer to do. Because if you're doing BRR and you're trying to build up cash flow, unless you're doing the really big deals, where, for example, some of the HMOs that we do, by the time we've finished renovating and refinance them, we're still generating £1,000 plus per house. But often most people are doing this on buy-to-lets as a single family unit. And in those, you might have a couple of £100 that you've got out of the property, and you're going to have to do a lot of those to be able to build up a reasonable amount of income to be able to live off that income and maybe doing this full time, which is my preference doing flipping. And I've got a video on this where the flipping and BRR, which is a best strategy. In fact, I think it's out this Wednesday. I think. Need to double check that. I think it might be out this Wednesday. Look out for that on the YouTube channel. It talks specifically about which is the right strategy. You want to go flipping, or do you want to go a BRR as a strategy? And the location is absolutely key in terms of where you are. And the thing to remember with flipping houses also is, because it takes time. I think one of the first questions we talked about earlier today was flipping, and talking about it could be 6 months before you come out the other end. So you've got to be able to fund your expenses, your lifestyle, your overheads during that time as well. The income doesn't come in straight away. So I hope that helps, because there's quite a lot of things to think about, and it's usually not enough information what you've just given me to be able to give you a solid answer, but hopefully give you some pointers. And look out for that video on the channel where I'll talk about this in a lot more detail. Our next question is KHUB on YouTube. Hi Saj, is rent-to-rent HMO a viable strategy for 2021? What are the setup costs typically? Is 10K enough? What are your thoughts on this strategy, and what are the pitfalls? So rent-to-rent is a good cash flow strategy. It is hard work though. That's what you have to understand. It's not easy. People sometimes sell the dream and say, hey, it's easy, get cash flow tomorrow. It's, you're up and running straight away. There's a lot of work you need to do. Essentially, you're acting like a letting agent, a super letting agent, where you're taking on a property from a landlord, but you're giving them the rent that they wanted, but you're renting it for way more than that. So, for example, renting out per room, you need to make sure in terms of compliance, fire safety, HMO licensing, if they're not already HMOs, or you might have to convert them to HMOs. So all of these things you've got to think about as well in terms of how that's going to work. So I think we've lost the LinkedIn, sorry, not LinkedIn, the Instagram connection. So with, I've lost my trail of thought now. What was the question? Oh, it was rent-to-rent, wasn't it? Sorry about that. Lost my trail of thought. So rent-to-rent, it is going to be a lot of work, but actually it's a great way to be able to build up an income. And it's a strategy I was using a number of years ago, and it enabled us to be able to build up a good income. And then from that, off the back of that, we're starting to do other things as well. And even now, I still do some rent-to-rent. It's not our core strategy, but if we've got a great deal that comes along that's going to produce a really good cash flow, then, we'd be open to taking it. Why would you turn it away if it means you can produce, good income? We've already got the infrastructure in place to be able to manage lots of HMOs. We've got a great team of people that can do that. So it's not really a challenge for us to take on that property and manage it that way. In terms of setup costs, if it's not an existing HMO, you've got to think about, you need to get a license for that. You'll need to make sure you've got fire doors in there, the fire alarm system, all the fire safety measures, your emergency lighting, your smoke seal strips in the doors, and etc. All these things, just as a very, very basic, just to make it compliant. Then, of course, you want to be able to rent it for a good rent. So you need to make the house look nice, tidy, presentable, clean. Whether that's a deep cleaning, whether it's redecorating in the property you might need to do. And then, of course, you're furnishing it and dressing it as well. And so then, you've got your bedroom furniture in each property, maybe about £500-600 typically we budget when we're getting a HMO room ready. You've got your communal space furniture, sofas, TV, dining table. You've got your kitchen appliances and things as well, your white goods. So you can easily burn £10,000 getting a house up and ready. And I know people talk about, you get a HMO up and running, it doesn't cost you very much. There's two ways to look at it. You're either taking on a property that's already a HMO, so it's already compliant, it's already furnished, and it's good to go. You'll probably pay quite a high rent for that. But the advantage is you can go straight to market and just get it rented out, and you'll earn a little bit of profit on that. Now, if you've got some voids, you can quite easily be in a position where you're not really making very much money because you have to pay quite a lot for the property in the first place. And so why would a landlord give you a property like this when they could just do it themselves? Well, it means they may not necessarily want the hassle or the headache. It means that one person will give them a fixed rent for it. It could be that there was a seasonal change happen. For example, recently when a lot of students went away because of the pandemic, there were empty HMOs. They could be repurposed for professional lets. So that's an example where you can take an existing HMO already up and running, and you're then effectively renting it for more than what you're paying the landlord. The other option is you take on a property that isn't at the moment a HMO. You've got to get it converted, you've got to get it up and running, furnished, all the costs and things we talked about, but you'll probably make more profit, but you spent a lot more money. It's a lot more risk as well. So, you need to balance it out in terms of what's going to work for you. And a lot of this does come down to where you are in the country. That has a big impact in terms of where this works. And some places work way better than others. Okay, our next question is from Ruhal on LinkedIn. How much is enough to start in the buy-to-let market in Birmingham? Do you work with new starters in partnering? So, Rahul, in terms of your question with regards to partnering and working with other people, generally people can work with me in two ways. They're either lending money for projects that I'm doing, so different projects I'm involved in, they're lending and funding those type of deals. That tends to be a minimum of £50,000, and it's essentially it's a fixed amount of money for a fixed period of time for a fixed return. Alternatively, you can come in as a partner in a project where we're sharing the risks and the rewards. So effectively, there's a joint venture in that particular deal, but they tend to be much bigger deals, and they tend to be really for those that have got more funds to invest. It's a minimum of £350,000. And when we talk about joint ventures, it's a little bit like a marriage. You're talking about long-term business relationships, and those are kind of things that you kind of get to know people first before you're doing those type of deals. So they're the two ways that I tend to work with other people in terms of investing with me. In terms of your question about getting started with buy-to-let, ultimately, I'd say, first of all, think about what is the outcome that you want from investing in property. What is it you're trying to achieve? And how is buy-to-let going to form part of that strategy to help you get there? So buy-to-let properties in Birmingham, for example, let's say a typical house, maybe say £200,000 or £250,000. You've got to put down 25% deposit. On that, you've got the stamp duty as well. You'll have to pay. You might have a little bit of money you need to spend to improve the property to get into reasonable order to be able to rent it out, and then you're collecting a rent each month. You're paying the mortgage, and you have a little bit of profit left over. And hey, you've got moving with one buy to let, and it might be that takes up a fair amount of your cash to be able to do that. And then how do you move forward? Even if it's £150,000 property, a cheaper property, you're still going to need £50,000 for the deposit, stamp duty, a little bit of money for refurbishments, etc. You ain't going to be left with very much change out of 50 grand to be able to do something like that. So I'd say it's not necessarily sort of what's the minimum you need. It's what are you trying to achieve, so you can find the right strategy to be able to do that. Because if you're saying, look, I want to be able to do this so I can create an income to be able to give up my day job, well, then I'm assuming, £200 or £300 a month profit from one buy to let is not going to be enough for you to be able to give up your day job. That's not going to help you achieve what you want to achieve, because once you've spent that money, you've bought the one property, yes, you've got it now, it's earning you some income, and you hopefully have some capital growth over time. However, how are you going to go and do the next one? Where's the money going to come from for the second and the third and the fourth to be able to build this up? So this is why the strategy is really important, to get the right strategy so you can build to achieve what ultimately you're trying to do through property investing. So our next question is from Jonathan on YouTube. Thank you for answering my question. How are your social housing properties doing? Have you got more videos in the pipeline, this topic? Yes, Jonathan, I'll be doing some more videos on social housing. Social housing, for those that don't know, is something I'm experimenting with a little bit over the last few months. One of my mentees, she's got a company set up and we're working with her. So we're really providing the properties. We're getting them all furnished, compliant, ready to hand over for people to move into. They're delivering the support element, finding the tenants, managing the tenancies, providing the additional support that they need to for the tenants. And we're doing like a profit share type of arrangement on that. That's what we're doing at the moment. I'm kind of just finding my feet a little bit. I'm not, at this stage, I'm not either way, whether it's going to be something we want to do a lot more of or whether something we'll stop doing. At this stage, I'm kind of just seeing how it goes, dipping my toe in the water, as I said, just to get a little feel for it and see how it goes. I think we're probably 50-ish something rooms, maybe, if I remember correctly. We'll probably go up to maybe 100 rooms and then kind of get a feel for how it's going before we make any long-term decisions. And also there's changes happening in social housing in Birmingham. I think it's a good thing because unfortunately there's a lot of companies that really just taking advantage of people just to line their pockets and not really deliver what they're supposed to do. So I think that also might present an opportunity for companies to come along and do this properly, which is where I'd be interested in, is to build solid long-term businesses. So, as I'm watching this space, as it's evolving, we'll make decisions about whether we want to do more of it or maybe pull back and do less of it. But I'll be definitely doing some more videos on that. So thank you for that question, Jonathan. Our next question is from Instagram. So Callie just posted up. It's from Ali S145. What do you think of commercial property? Commercial property is a great strategy. It's a strategy that people have been doing for a very, very long time. There's nothing new about that. It seems to be more interesting and more appealing now. More people are looking at it. My portfolio is primarily residential. I haven't really done much commercial, but I'm interested in commercial property that we can convert to residential. That's really my interest in it. But I'm open to looking at more commercial, and I think as the market's changing, market's evolving, I'll be doing more commercial property with commercial tenants in there as well. I think the thing I like about commercial property, was a few things I like about commercial property. One is versus residential. One is that your tenants are responsible pretty much for the whole property. Unlike, say, your residential tenants, where you're still responsible for the building, you can't really shift everything over to them. And if you've got issues around tenants not paying or problematic tenants, in commercial property, you've got, as a landlord, you've got a lot more power and control there, versus a residential, you often feel like you've got your hands tied. There's very little you can do. Like, try evicting a tenant right now that's not paying their rent. It's a nightmare to try and do that. Whereas, even though there's some limitations right now in commercial, but generally speaking, it's much easier. So it means you've got more control of the property. And the other thing I like about it is how you can force the value up of a property. So commercial property is really based on a multiplier of how much rent that you're collecting per annum. So let's say it's £10,000 a year rent you're collecting, you multiply it by 10, you say the property's worth £100,000. Just as an idea, for example, as a rough calculation of how you might do that. Whereas a residential property is worth on, it's bricks and mortar valuation. The rent has a bit of an impact, but it's not really driven by that. So, if you can get the pricing right, i.e. you buy cheaper commercial property that might be vacant, you get the right tenant in there, that forces up the value, you remortgage that, you extract the cash out, you can grow the business in that way. So, I do like a commercial property. I'll probably do more of it this year and coming next few years because I think it's an interesting strategy for sure. So let's get our next question up. This is from Nazmul on Facebook. Is it worth setting up a limited company before purchasing your first property? Myself and 3 individuals want to invest in property together, 25k each. Would you suggest limited company? So there's a few things there. This is the last question that we'll do before we wrap up this evening. First, there's 2 things there you mentioned. One is a limited company because you want to purchase property. And so you need to understand what is it you're trying to do. And generally speaking, people are buying property through limited companies right now because it's more tax efficient. It's a better route to build a portfolio than it is to buy property in your own name. So that's the first thing. So it's a taxation thing you need to look at. Is it really going to help you going down that route? The second thing there you mentioned is that there's 3 of you coming together. You're putting money into the business. So effectively becoming business partners as well. building this property business together. And so also, so you need shareholder agreement in terms of how you're going to work together, what the arrangement's going to be, who's going to do what, how ultimately you're going to set up this business, and what is it you're trying to achieve. And remember, these type of arrangements, they are long-term business arrangements. They're not the kind of thing you do for 6 months or 2 years and think, well, you know what, I've kind of changed my mind, I want to go and do something else now. You're kind of tied in together for the long term. You'll have mortgages together that you'll be responsible for on the properties as well. So I'd say, you need to really thrash out the details of how you feel about working together as long-term business partners, how you're going to get more funds together, where you're going to buy, who's going to add what into the pot in terms of time, skill, resources, money, whatever it might be. So you've got the partnership side to sort out in terms of working together, the three of you. And then you've also got the taxation side to sort out and think which is going to be the most tax efficient route. Because of course, the alternative could be maybe an LLP or something as well. So it's worth looking at what's going to be the right way. So I'd speak to a good accountant, a competent accountant, give you some pointers on that. And a good solicitor can put together the shareholder agreement for you as well. And if you need some assistance and some pointers, just send me a message on social media and I'll try and connect you with somebody that can help. So before we wrap up, I just want to say, I really appreciate you. I'll come back to that question in just a moment. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch these. We're here every Monday at 8:30 p.m. I'm sharing my knowledge and experience with you, ultimately to help you get further faster in your property investing journey. Remember, we've got 3 videos a week on YouTube, so look out for those as well. If there's anything more you want to see, certain things you'd like me to cover, then let me know and we'll try and do more videos around that for you. We recently hit 14,000 subscribers on the channel, so I'm so grateful for that as well, that people are taking the time to watch those videos. So let's get that last question up before we wrap up then. So this is from Burning Desire on YouTube. How much interest do you offer on 50k lending? So really, Burning Desire, this I'm guessing that's not your real name. This depends on the project. It depends on how we're using the money, what type of property we're purchasing, how the deal is being structured. So the interest rates vary, but obviously it's something we agree beforehand. On the project that we do. So what I tend to say to people is, look, what you get with me is modest to good returns. You're not going to get outstanding returns. And the reason you're not going to get outstanding returns, and I'll put my hand up to that, is because I'm very careful and cautious investor. And the reason being, because I'm working with other people's money, I'm quite careful about what I do and how I approach investing. Which means we don't take any silly risks and we're not over ambitious and we don't get too optimistic in terms of what we're doing. So it tends to be modest to good returns, but the kind of thing that we've been doing for a long time and hopefully will continue to do for many years to come. So I hope that helps. I just want to say thank you all so much for watching. Thank you for spending your Monday evening with me. I look forward to seeing you again next Monday at the same time. Thank you so much.